other things I often work on, I'm always making newsletter templates for my customers. Newsletters and emails are really big in today's market. Everybody checks their emails every day, so people are always trying to send new promotions and special offers. People are always trying to grab everybody's email addresses on websites. Interesting stat I heard the other day is personal data today is now more valuable than oil, which is really interesting. Just because if you can segment people into these groups, get their contact details, know what they are looking for, you can market on a really large scale to a really large database of people. Emails are built in HTML and CSS as well, but they use a very bizarre 1991 type of HTML and CSS called tables, which is really convoluted code and very fragile and delicate and often breaks depending on what email client you're using. They look completely different in Gmail, whether it's Apple Mail or whether you're using other stuff like Thunderbird or Mail. It's really hard to get a consistent design across all of the different email clients in tables, in newsletters, in HTML and CSS, but I do a lot of contract work on them. I did some newsletters for The Guardian. They were trying to move their clients away from buying newspapers in shops because people aren't really doing that anymore with the rise of the internet. Everyone checks The Guardian on the Guardian website. So I was working on creating this huge set of newsletters that they were going to send to all their potential clients saying, hey, why don't you sign up to The Guardian for £3.99 a month and you'll have access to all this free, independent, unbiased information. Very important word today, I think. Another huge player in the advanced marketing and web CRM, I'm talking about Salesforce in the corner. CRM is a customer relationship manager. So, I mean, I've worked in some financial industries and they all use Salesforce. The Salesforce is the #1 CRM in the world. They have the tallest building in San Francisco, and it's an incredible piece of software. Slightly similar to how WordPress works. You log in, and then it tells you who's been visiting your website, who's been clicking on what. It'll tell you what countries they're coming from, and it will advise you what you need to show your customers in order to get more potential sales. Fascinating bit of software. Very specialist, once again. If you're into kind of data and analytics, Salesforce is a great avenue. One of my best friends, Andrew, was telling me that they're paying for his training at work to learn all about Salesforce, and he said it's quite easy. It's easier than he thought it would be. Mainly HTML and CSS, placing them in different boxes and stuff, and he was saying the pay grade, once you get your Salesforce certificate as a web developer, goes from 400 to 600 pounds a day, he was telling me. So really interesting bit of kit. Quite easy to use. I worked at a cryptocurrency recently called Kinesis.money, and they were using Salesforce for all their stuff. It's a big, large corporation type of partner. I mean, I think it costs something silly like £1,000 a month to use it, but if you're bringing it, if you're working for, my friend works for Revolution, the makeup website, and they're using Salesforce. So when they're bringing in over £5 million a month through their website, £1,000 for some extra customers doesn't seem like a lot when you put it into perspective for them. One.com, we touched on a bit earlier. I recommended it to you guys. It will soon, no doubt, be getting into the professional world within a few years, and you will really stand out from the competition with a custom designed CV, custom designed portfolio, your own website showcasing your work, your email address, all that for £2 a month. Could be good. As we're still a bit ahead of schedule, I was just going to show you my PDF. Now I've shown you my homepage. You You can see I've got a bit of branding consistency throughout all my stuff, throughout my invoices, throughout my proposals. I have a proposal template. It's about 2,000 words long that I send to all potential new customers, discussing what my costs are going to be, and they all use the same kind of consistent branding, as I like to call it. Try and use the same colors, stick with a style throughout all your work, and try and stick to it. I'm actually using the same fonts in my CV that I'm using on my website. So be creative, have fun. You know, when you're in a creative field, people will be impressed with some radical ideas, someone who's a bit more on edge, make you stand out from competition. Once again. Okay. Give me a second whilst I bring up my notes. Okay, so this was all the easy part of the talk. So does anyone have any questions so far before we get into the nitty-gritty of the code about this aspect of the business? Anything about employees, freelancing, accountancy, getting new clients? No? You're all good? Fair enough. No problem. We'll move on to the next stage then. So, let's get into it. Let's dive in. Again, if you guys remember this URL at the top, you can link through to the W3 schools and find out some tutorials here. So what are we looking here? I'm using my homepage as the example because I've been showing you a lot of it. Very proud, very proud. Again, I'm right-clicking on my top image there, the Archibald Butler one that I showed you earlier. I'm targeting that and I'm inspecting it in the browser. Let's just do that really one more time, because there's another little button that I wanted to show you that I didn't bring up. So you're inspecting, here we go, we'll do it just like in a screenshot. Inspecting the top logo. I'm using this little button to test on iPhone, the little device button there. It's selected, so I'll unselect that to go full screen. And then over here you've got 3 little dots, and then you've got some like weird little square symbols, and that's to move your inspector around. By default, it comes up at the bottom, but to test for responsive web development, you're better off having it on the side so that you can grab the edge and test what it looks like on all your devices quickly, like this, if you see what I mean. So I know that's my large screen, then when I'm dragging it in, I'm getting onto tablet landscape, that's like tablet portrait, tablet landscape, that'll be iPhone landscape, right down to iPhone portrait here. And you can see in the CSS, someone mentioned that my title wasn't legible on mobile. They said, you've got text that's unreadable on a small device. So I put in a bit of code to just hide the title here on really small devices. I'll be showing you about responsive media queries in the CSS in a bit. So let's get in there. So I selected this. If I highlight it in the code now, it's highlighting it in the page, which is kind of cool. It's like the opposite. So over here. Just next to the arrow there, it says type ID equals title image. The way the web works with HTML and CSS is every single element that you place onto a page, you give it a unique ID. If you get into coding, a unique ID is something you're going to hear a lot of. Every time you create an object, you give it a name, a unique ID, so that you can call it in your code and manipulate it. In this specific case, I've got title image because I'm going to be manipulating it in the CSS. So here we've got the HTML, hypertext markup language, place elements on the page. In this instance, we've got an image, a link, a URL link to where the image is stored on my server. Alt tags are for good practice. It's often for people with disabilities. Very important. If someone was blind and they went to my website on their computer and they selected this image, it would say, this image is Archibald Butler, a roaming alchemist, a web dev and illustration. They're called screen readers. It's to help people who are visually impaired access the internet as well, which is awesome. You can see that my image highlighted tag here is surrounded by an A tag on the previous line. It opens here, it has a link to a modal, and then it closes after the image. Does anyone know what a modal is? No? It's a pop-up. It's a pop-up box with extra information inside. So if I click on that, it brings up an extra box of SEO, search engine optimization, text, because my page wasn't very text heavy, so in order to start ranking on Google, one of my friends suggested you need to have some text in there, but I was like, I don't really want to have text overlaying my original design, which is all about the imagery, so I put it inside a hidden box, but it's still on the homepage and Google still recognizes it and will read it in order to help me rank better on Google. So little tricks like that are quite interesting. Sorry, my finger's going. Okay. Thanks. Cool. So I showed you where the HTML sits on the page. Then over here we've got the CSS. So again, the ID, this is the ID we were talking about. Open curly brackets. This specific images has two CSS declarations. Hey, I want my image to have a width of 100%, and I want my image to have an automatic height which is relative to the width of the image. So I'm declaring a width and a height on my image so my image knows how it needs to